Hello and welcome to everyone here and in watching the video at a later point in time. Again, I'm Todd Carr. I'm the Director of Education Abroad and National Exchange. I'm going to be discussing some federal funding opportunities through the U.S. government to help students who have an interest in studying abroad. But before I do that, I wanted to take everyone to the Study Abroad website here at UNM. Studyabroad.unm.edu is where you're going to find a majority of information regarding what study abroad opportunities exist at the University of New Mexico. We have short-term programs during the summer, over the winter break, spring break, to year-long, academic year-long programs that are either faculty-led, so a faculty member within your academic department might be taking a group of students, to direct exchanges with partner institutions all around the world, to direct enroll opportunities, working with universities where you would enroll with them for a semester or a year. And all your credits will transfer back to the University of New Mexico. And if you have any financial aid with the University of New Mexico for undergraduates, if you have an opportunity or a lottery scholarship or a Pell Grant, that is transferable to any study abroad program that's been approved by the university. If you are a graduate student, it is possible to utilize some of your academic funding for study abroad, depending on your academic department, but there are additional scholarship opportunities available to you as well. Today, I am primarily going to be speaking about the Boren grant program through the U.S. government, but I also will make note of the Critical Language Scholarship and the Gilman Scholarship Program. The Gilman Scholarship Program is for undergraduate students that receive a Pell Grant. It's a federally funded grant up to $25,000 to support undergraduate students who wish to study abroad anywhere in the world. And if you have questions about the Gilman Grant, you are more than welcome to reach out to the Education Abroad office. We're happy to visit with you about the application and advising process. That is an annual application for the following academic year. The Critical Language Scholarship, I'll briefly mention, is very, very similar to the Boren Scholarship, which I'll be discussing here in just a few moments. There are a couple very unique differences between the two programs, between the Boren and the Critical Language Scholarship, but I will kind of discuss those as we get to those differences during the formal Boren presentation. But again, if you have any questions about studying abroad, either at the undergraduate or graduate level, please do take an opportunity to go to studyabroad.unm.edu. You'll see the 10 steps to studying abroad that will walk you through the process that we have here at the university. You'll also have the ability to schedule an appointment with a study abroad advisor through LoboAchieve. For graduate students, generally we have you contact the office directly. And if there are any faculty listening today, there are opportunities for you to develop a study abroad program as well. And we're happy to discuss funding opportunities for those programs if you have any questions. But since we are focusing on funding and scholarships today, I also will make a special point of our funding and scholarship page on the Study Abroad website, which will give you some resources for how to budget for study abroad. It'll discuss all of the UNM-based study abroad scholarships, the National Study Abroad scholarships, which I'll be discussing here in a few moments with the Boren, the CLS, and the Gilman. But there are a number of scholarships across the university and nationally that you may be eligible for to utilize along with your existing financial aid here at the university. So with that being said, I will jump into the Boren Awards. Again, the Boren and the Critical Language Scholarship are very, very similar programs. They have two main focuses with these grants. So these grants are designed for students who are studying languages that are deemed critical to national security here in the United States. That is a very, very long list. It is not an exhaustive list, and it is a list that evolves depending on national security needs. So to give you a kind of a brief understanding, oh, did I get it? Next page. All right, so this is who the Boren is for. So a couple of the requirements that you need for the Boren, the CLS, and the Gilman is that one, you are a U.S. citizen. For the CLS, and the Boren, you are planning to study a foreign language. Basically, they are saying anywhere in the world outside of Western Europe, Australia, and Canada and New Zealand. So basically outside of the English-speaking world, the critical language in the Boren Scholarship is something that you can apply for. Again, the Gilman is for anywhere in the world. It is for undergraduates that have a Pell Grant, but they have no preference of language study or academic discipline. The Boren and the CLS do not have an academic preference in the sense that you can major in anything, but their focus is on language acquisition. So you may be a biology major. If you are going to utilize one of the grants, the Boren or the CLS, you will not be taking any biology classes. It is for language learning only. You do need to be matriculated at an accredited U.S. institution, that is the University of New Mexico, and you cannot be a dual citizen of the country that you are planning on studying abroad in. So for example, if you are a dual passport holder with the United States and Brazil, you would not be able to study Portuguese in Brazil. Portuguese is one of the languages that both Boren and CLS are looking for candidates for, but you would not qualify. Even if you do not speak Portuguese, if you are a Brazil passport holder, you wouldn't be able to study that. And Portugal does not count as part of the Western Europe specifics of either of these grants. The one unique piece of the Boren, there is a public service component to the Boren grant. So the Critical Language Scholarship and the Gilman, you can receive the funding as long as you meet the parameters. There are no additional requirements to those grants post-study abroad. The Boren is the exception to this. The Boren requires that after graduation, you are willing and do serve in a public service capacity within the U.S. government. Now, I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, but it is a very broad service component. It is everything from the Peace Corps, the military, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Education. It can be at the local government level. These are a very, very broad set of opportunities where you can be employed that will serve the interests or the public service piece of the Boren requirement. All right, there we go. So there are two levels of Boren. The Boren has the scholarship and it has the fellowship. The scholarship is for undergraduate students. The fellowship is for graduate students. The application is more or less the same type of application. The great thing about Boren, the Critical Language Scholarship, and the Gilman is that they provide numerous resources on how to complete the application process. You're also able to go onto YouTube, onto Google. There are dozens and dozens of individuals that have been through these process that will do nice little coaching videos as to what is required for the Boren applications. But these are the general amounts that you will see awarded, not only for the Boren, but the Critical Language Scholarship and the Gilman. Generally get up to about $25,000 if you're doing an academic or a calendar year study abroad experience. Again, the Boren, because it requires the public service requirement, that is a stipulation that must be met within the first year after graduation. If for some reason you fail to find a position within their public service requirement list, you may have to return the funding. So that is the biggest maybe hurdle or caveat to the Boren grant. The CLS and the Gilman do not have those requirements, but the Boren does. The Boren, the CLS, and the Gilman more or less cover the same types of expenses. So they can help cover for airfare, for program tuition. If you get a Gilman, you're an undergraduate student, and you have an opportunity in a lottery scholarship, for example, that covers your UNM tuition, and you get the Gilman, that's just additional funding that you can shift to your travel insurance, your lodging, your local transportation, your visa-related fees, depending on where you're going. They do not cover these pieces though. That is across the board for all three of those grants. They do not cover your passports, your vaccinations. They do not cover the cost of you taking a dependent with you overseas. They do not cover the cost of your rent or your car payment here in the US. They are funds specifically designed to be utilized for the expenses associated with the actual travel and living abroad. Just a quick note that if you are a veteran or you're a member of the ROTC program, you're certainly eligible to apply. They do tend to give a bit of preference for veterans and ROTC students, but that is something that you may want to be aware of. And then jumping back to the main reason for the Bourne and the Critical Language Scholarship is that they are looking for individuals that have an interest in national security. So one of the pieces of both the CLS and the Bourne application is you need to explain the relevance of the country you wish to travel to and the relevance of the language that you are learning. So all three of these programs are going to have application essays, and they want to know very specifically why you are choosing that program and why you're choosing that country, why are you choosing that language. Every year, the review committee changes. The review committee is made up of members of various universities, various federal agencies, but no committee is the same year after year after year. So it is a little bit arbitrary as to what that committee is going to want to see in any given year. What works this year may not necessarily be the best approach for next year in regards to your essays and the information that you are including. The one big thing that you would add to the Bourne is to discuss specifically what you plan on doing in the public service sector. How will these language skills, this international travel, assist you in whatever future job you are looking for within the federal government? Again, CLS and Gilman are not going to have that, but they all are going to ask for a detailed argument related to your academic goals and your professional goals somewhere down the line. So again, if you're a biology major, why are you wanting to take Urdu or Quechua or Portuguese? How is that fitting into your professional and personal development, even if you are not going the public service route within the US federal government? This is, again, just another brief detail about what the public service requires. Again, it is for 1 year for the Bourne. They do not help you find the job. That is a critical piece of information that you need to keep in mind. They will provide resources on where you can find those jobs, like jobs.gov, for example. But they will not help you get that job. Just because you're a Bourne recipient does not guarantee a position. And for that reason, they do give a 1 year, they can basically defer your service for a year if you're not able to get a job. But that is a conversation between you and the Bourne folks to discuss a little bit about why you weren't able to get a position. But again, they do a really nice job of talking about, where other Bourne recipients have found positions, and these are as broad as you can possibly imagine. Yes, there are all the various departments within Washington, D.C., but it doesn't mean you have to be in Washington, D.C. You could work for the Forest Service here in Albuquerque, for example. That is part of public service. It does talk a little bit about some of the priority agencies, the CIA, the FBI, Department of State, Homeland Security, ICE, for example. These would all be priority positions. So basically what they're saying is if you are a Bourne recipient, they do want you to very seriously consider these departments, but they are not the only departments that you may want to consider. Here's another list of some other agencies that you'd be eligible to be employed with: the Center for Disease Control, the Peace Corps. I will make note, if you are an undergraduate student, we have a Peace Corps prep program here at the university. Basically what that is, that's a series of about 15 credit hours across the UNN curriculum, that if you complete that, you receive a Peace Corps prep certification. And what that does is that increases your chances of getting selected to the Peace Corps on your first round of applications. Peace Corps is known to not select people on their first application. It is not unusual for Peace Corps individuals to have to apply 2 or 3 times. The Peace Corps prep program kind of eliminates one of those rounds of applications. But again, this is not an exhaustive list of where the Bourne will accept public service, but it is something to take a look at. These are some of the resources that they're going to provide, a little bit to kind of help get you prepared to make these applications for jobs. The resume consulting is very nice. They will do a number of seminars and job fairs around the country, both virtually and in person. So they will give you some guidance, but again, it doesn't guarantee a position. You see this individual here is working for FEMA for some of the national emergencies that we have. So getting back to the eligibility, again, Boren and Critical Language Scholarship want you to demonstrate a commitment to the language. I know that's challenging here at the University of New Mexico because we do not offer all of the languages that you're going to see on this list coming up in a few slides. What they are discussing, though, they are wanting you to demonstrate, for example, if you are interested in studying Urdu, for example, what are you doing to study Urdu now here at the University of New Mexico, even though we are not offering Urdu classes right now? For Spanish, or for Latin American Spanish, for Latin American Portuguese, for Quechua, some of the other indigenous languages, that's a much easier conversation or much easier to demonstrate on this application. But if you're looking at broader areas, broader languages, that's where we can help guide you through that conversation. The other piece that they want is they want to know that the program that you are selecting is a language-focused program. And I'll discuss a little bit more about what that means in a few slides. There are programs that are specifically language-oriented. There are language schools. There are university programs that have a very broad curriculum like UNM. And we can kind of help you identify where you want to go and what institution you want to work with through the study abroad office. They also want you to be very realistic about proficiency gains. If you are going for a short-term summer program, you are most likely not going to be as proficient in a language if you go for a year. So these are the 2 types of programs that Bourne and CLS are looking for you to identify. So a self-identified program would be something that we help you find through the study abroad office. That's an exchange program, that's a direct enrollment program that's working with one of our institutional partners. There are regional flagship language initiatives, and these are U.S. universities that either have sites abroad, particularly in Africa and South America, or they may actually have sites here within the United States where you could do language immersion programming. Again, this is going to talk a little bit about the self-identified structure, so the University Study Abroad Office, third-party providers who we work with, and it will talk a little bit about, can you do an internship, can you do graduate research? Those are all optional components of a program. The key focus is the language acquisition. I'll kind of jump over for the sake of time. So for example, I know we're in the Latin American Iberian Institute, but I will talk about the flagship programs for Africa. So these are through the University of Florida. University of Wisconsin is looking at Southeast Asia right now for some of their programming. But just to kind of give you an idea, the one thing that I will note is that you do not, again, need to speak that language now. You may have 0 experience with a language. What they want to see is a demonstrated interest in the language. So doing your research, reaching out to those speakers within the community, and making sure that you are starting a language learning process. This is a good map. This is fairly reflective of both the critical language scholarship and the Bourne as to where you can go. The ones colored in blue, the reason for that is because these are programs these are regions of the world that are considered level 3 or level 4 by the US State Department for travel warnings. So they're basically saying if you want to go to Cuba or you want to go to, oh my geography's bad, Nicaragua, you need to have a backup plan. So if you really want to go to Nicaragua, that's great. They are fine with you applying to that. The University of New Mexico is okay with you applying to that program. But if due to civil or political unrest, travel to one of these regions is not possible, you need to look at one of the green places. That is where you're not going to have a problem. What has happened in the past due to conflict and to political unrest, if the State Department says you can't go as a US citizen, you cannot go there and you do not get your funding. So they will pull the funding. UNM may say you're fine to go, but the Boren and the CLS and the Gilman will not give you the money if you still choose to go to an area that's deemed unsafe by the US Department of State. Here is a list of language preferences for the Boren. This is relatively similar for critical language scholarship. Again, it is not extensive, but there are some specifics I will point out. You will notice you do not see Spanish on this list. You will not see Spanish on the CLS list, and the reason for that is because we are a multilingual country. We have a massive population that is bilingual, that speaks Spanish either as a first or a second language. So they are really looking at a number of these other languages, Eastern European, East Asian, South Asian languages. The one that's probably most of interest to LAII is Portuguese, of course. And they are generally speaking about Brazilian Portuguese, not Portugal Portuguese. But you can also see under Latin America that Haitian Creole, the number of other languages. Again, this is not exhaustive. This does sometimes change, but this is a pretty good baseline for what languages are available. They do like to have an academic preference, but again, this is not a guarantee of getting the grant, and it will not exclude you from getting a grant. But just because we're talking about national security, this is kind of where they're looking into that. So the essays are basically the same for all three. They're looking at letters of recommendation. They're going to look for transcripts. They're going to look for your study plan. They're going to look at the essays that you write. We can discuss these more on a one-on-one conversation in the study abroad office. We can show you examples of what students have wrote in the past. Both Bourne, or all three, Bourne, CLS, and Gilman are really good at telling you what the questions are before you apply. So you're not just going to log in and be shocked by whatever essay question they're going to ask. These are the deadlines for the Bourne Fellowships and the Bourne Scholarships. These are different than Gilman and CLS. They do not work on the same time frame for deadlines. So if you have questions about that, you can refer to the CLS or the Gilman websites, or you can reach out to the Global Education Office. We're happy to help. And then this is a nice timeline that they provide. I am the campus representative for Gilman, CLS, and Bourne, so you can always reach out to me in the study abroad office. You can reach out to the folks here at LAII. And again, the deadlines for Bourne are going to be in January. That is for this coming academic year, 25-26. And if you would like more information directly from Bourne, you can reach them at their website. You can reach them at their email. And for the study abroad office, our email is studyabd@unm.edu, or you can go to studyabroad.unm.edu for more information. Good?
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Did our audience have questions?
I was wondering if you could go back to the slide, about 4 slides before this, where you had the list. The other way,
This one?
yeah.
So again, this is not exhaustive.
Mhm.
You can be in any other degree program.
Okay.
This is a preference, but we've had students from across. And I will add one more thing before I hand over. I want to be conscious of the time. We have been told by the people at Boren, at Gilman, at CLS, students from the University of New Mexico proportionately do better than their counterparts in other states. There's a couple reasons for that. One, these programs are looking for diversity, and we're not talking about race, ethnicity necessarily. They're talking about regional diversity. So the general example that I have been given is that there will be 1,000 Californians apply for the Boren, probably more. There will be 4 New Mexicans apply. So your essay will be strong. It may not be as strong as 900 Californians, but because you're from New Mexico, it's going to put you on a much more even playing field. They want to see representation from the Southwest, from the Upper Plains, from the Deep South. The majority of applicants are coming from the coast, both East Coast and West Coast. So we actually do very well. We get at least one of the 3 grants, if not 2 or 3 every year awarded. So that's something, again, we can help you with, but something to keep in mind that because you are from New Mexico, the University of New Mexico, that helps you immensely in this application process.